Hello and welcome to the Eating Disorder Therapist podcast. I'm Harriet Frew, eating disorder therapist, here to support you in overcoming disordered eating and finding peace with food. So today I want to talk about GLP-1 medications, eating disorders, weight loss, food noise, and all this stuff inside the therapy room, and give you some anecdotal experience from my experiences of working with some clients who are taking the medications, and also my thoughts around all of it. So let's dive in. So it's a reality that many people are now taking the GLP-1 meds, and many do not have the best food relationship. Some have eating disorders or disordered eating, and naturally clients are bringing their experiences into the therapy room. Now, as an eating disorder therapist, it's tempting to protest and write off the meds as the evil demon, and to staunchly favour a psychological approach as the purest path to healing. Now, although I favour the deeper healing work and avoiding quick fixes, the GLP-1 meds are here to stay and bring another factor to the already complex formulation of understanding eating disorders. So I'm going to share now 5 anecdotal thoughts from my experiences so far with all of this. So number 1, if you have an eating disorder, it is not recommended to take the meds, but people will. Now, Oprah's talk in March 2024, Shame, Blame and the Weight Loss Revolution, was one of the watershed moments of awareness in bringing these drugs to the wider population. They suddenly seemed like a feasible option for the masses regarding weight loss. Now, these meds were now increasingly accessible and easier to use. Just one injection a week seemed achievable and was then marketable too, whereas the previous incarnations required multiple injections daily. Celebrities, film stars and influencers have embraced the jabs in the last 2 years, and many who previously backed body positivity have notably shrunk in body size. The skinny aesthetic has returned full force. And the jabs don't only impact the gut and digestive process, which is the kind of main area that many kind of weight loss jabs tend to focus on. These wonder meds, in inverted commas, get through the blood-brain barrier and decrease the unwanted food noise. So not only are you less preoccupied with thoughts about food, but your desire for highly palatable and sugary food falls. Now, in the therapy room, I've worked with several clients in larger bodies who have experimented with the meds and wish to work on food relationship in the process. And it's definitely an emotional roller coaster of experimentation. Excitement about potential weight loss, which seemed unattainable before. Guilt and shame around feelings of what feels like cheating the system. Fear and anxiety around the longer term impacts, whether there's a permanent choice or not. And relief to share openly about the totality of the experience. So number 2, the main motivators for taking the GLPs. So why do people take them? Well, it's often a combination of health-driven and aesthetic reasons, but we do know that losing weight does not always equate with better health. Although society very much favours the body mass index, BMI, as the holy grail of health interpretation, BMI is factually not that reliable, as the tool was created for groups of white European men and was never meant to be utilised as a measure for individuals. So it also doesn't take body composition into consideration. So if you're taller, bigger boned and have larger muscle mass, your BMI may be deemed unhealthy, whereas you may be perfectly fine for your body. And research shows that health can be improved significantly with shifting health behaviours. So for example, walking more, drinking water, prioritising sleep and reducing alcohol and stress. But having said all this, it's completely understandable that people want to be thinner for aesthetic reasons, because it's a sad reality that weight stigma and fat phobia are rife in the culture. If you lose weight, you'll experience thin privilege and a genuinely elevated level of societal acceptance. And as humans, we want to fit in and be accepted as part of the tribe. It's completely understandable to desire for acceptance. And whereas in the past it was endless diets and wellness miracle plans to chase the thin aesthetic, now the drugs are understandably an appealing option. Number 3, the not so sexy impact of taking the meds. So when you take the meds, you're likely to experience rapid weight loss, at least initially. Now, in the therapy room, I see my clients experiencing a honeymoon period of euphoria. It truly feels like the magic elixir towards change and transformation. Now, having said this, not everyone gets on with the drugs. You can feel extremely nauseous and unwell, and then it's not sustainable to continue. People then come off the drugs and weight gain creeps back. And it can feel extremely distressing and overwhelming to see this. And absolutely, this can propel people to experiment with more extreme ways of coping. So behaviours such as taking laxatives, vomiting, overexercise, chewing and spitting all can take an aggressive grip. And physically, it's not beneficial often for body composition because rapid weight loss results in loss of muscle over fat, which is not so healthy for the body. And when you come off the drugs, there's a significant potential for weight gain when the food noise returns. So weight gain is likely to result in increased fat storage over muscle, so your baseline body composition shifts. So basically, every time you sort of yo-yo dieting, losing weight, gaining weight, you tend to lose muscle each time. And maintaining muscle is extremely important as we age for all kinds of reasons. And research from the Biggest Loser TV show showed that 6 years on, that the contestants' metabolic rates had never recovered due to the accelerated weight loss experienced. And what about people who are persisting with the drugs? So we don't really know the longer term impacts yet. Now, for some in the short term, they plough on with the meds, even if they're feeling incredibly ill, as the weight loss is seductive and rewarding. But it can be a miserable experience, day to day feeling nauseous and ill. But of course, this isn't true for everyone. Individual experiences vary widely. And some of my clients have found themselves eating despite the lack of food noise once that honeymoon period passes. Now, I know I've got one client I'm working with at the moment who had a honeymoon period of probably around 9 months. And then after that, those particular trigger events that happened in her life. And then actually she sort of continued eating even though the food noise was still absent. Another one as well is when weight loss plateaus, you can become really disillusioned and return to food for comfort. And also as well, people become really obsessed with weight and numbers, in quite a driven way. So my experience so far is that the meds are a tool, but they don't fix underlying issues with food, beyond those kind of early day kind of novelty days where it kind of feels like everything is wonderful. And that's a bit like so many diets and wellness plans. Number 4, the food noise component. Now, I think this is really interesting. So food noise, it's the persistent intrusive thoughts about food people have even when they're not hungry. And it's the constant mental chatter about what, when, how much to eat, which bubbles through daily life. Now, one of the celebrated benefits of the GLP meds is the decrease in food noise. But we know, though, that food noise is often a symptom of undereating, mental or physical restriction. So physical restriction, not eating enough, eliminating food groups or delaying eating. And mental restriction can include a lot of judgment around food, not allowing yourself the yum and pleasure with full permission to eat the foods that you genuinely enjoy. And the Minnesota starvation study demonstrates the potent power of restrictive eating. The men were starved of food and became psychologically obsessed with it. And in fact, several wished to retrain as chefs after the experiment ended, this being the extent of their food preoccupation. So if food is restricted for a human, you cannot sidestep the food fixation that takes over you. And this doesn't just happen when people who are starving, doesn't just happen with people who are starving and underweight. You can be undereating in any size, body shape or weight. And I think that's often misunderstood. So for example, someone might be, restricting on an extremely low calorie meal plan for days on end and then be having kind of intermittent huge binges. But actually for a lot of the time, they are really undereating and not in a good place. So people with eating disorders usually do experience a lot of food noise. And if you have a healthy relationship with food, you're probably not going to be thinking about food too much. Maybe around 20% of your day, and will fluctuate depending on lifestyle and habits. But if you're spending 40 to 50% of your day obsessing, this is potentially a dangerous amount. With bulimia and binge eating, food preoccupation can be even higher, and clients with anorexia nervosa can experience up to 100% plus of food noise in their day as they're even dreaming about food at night. So I would argue that food noise is largely connected with disordered eating behaviours and often dietary restraint in some form. And although turning off food noise might feel beneficial, in fact, you're overriding your body's natural signals around hunger and appetite. And I found that several of my clients taking the GLP-1 drugs are often malnourished and in restriction, and this is not so beneficial for health. And it also carries the risk that if and when you have to come off the drugs, you're catapulted back into sort of full-on connection with your body, with full throttle, and then you're likely to experience bigger food noise than you ever have before. So, is it helpful to turn off the food noise? I mean, I think for some, maybe that could be helpful to have the edge taken off with that. But I think in another way, actually just like losing this disconnection with yourself is not so beneficial really for the long term. So number 5, working with the drugs in the eating disorder space. So as a therapist, I believe it's important to recognise the presence of the drugs, putting aside personal viewpoints. We need to reduce shame and have open conversations about the GLP-1 use, and clients will be tempted by the drugs, whatever their shape and body size. And when working with clients, it's helpful to balance psychoeducation and a harm reduction perspective. And fundamentally, everyone has autonomy and choice with their body. But if you're hugely tempted by the drugs, it's useful to explore why you want to lose weight in the first place, because bodies of all shapes and sizes can be healthy. But what are the genuine reasons? Because it might be that some of your health goals could be achieved in other ways, and your confidence too, because we know that getting thinner is not necessarily a magic pill to self-worth and body acceptance. But understand, it's a difficult concept to swallow in a culture that tells you otherwise. So I think GLPs are not the magic pill or the devil incarnate either. They can be a valuable tool for some, and collaborations between eating disorder services and weight loss providers would be incredibly helpful with guidelines and protocols around best practice, because it's largely unregulated now. Now, I know that one of my clients with binge eating disorder had worked with me for over a year before making a personal decision to take the meds. Her decision was mainly health driven due to mobility issues and type 2 diabetes. Now, working on her relationship with food prior to the meds helped her to navigate weight loss in a less extreme way. And she also has emotional regulation tools to use and had worked on self-worth, allowing a less obsessive approach in the process. So the GLP-1 meds did contribute to her overall goal of improving blood sugars and improving her quality of life and independence. So as a therapist, I just think it's really important to acknowledge the complexity and competing dialogues, because I think the GLP-1s are here to stay for now, and their presence needs addressing and working with relationship with food and eating disorders. Okay, so thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you very much. If you're not following me already on Instagram, do seek me out, the eating disorder therapist _. If you'd like written articles of this podcast, please subscribe to my Substack. The link is in the show notes. And if you enjoy this podcast, I would be so grateful if you'd follow, rate and review, as it helps it reach so many more listeners. Thank you so much for listening today, and I look forward to sharing another podcast episode with you very soon.